My name's Jenny, and I'm concerned that the so-called World Malaria Day this year has neglected to mention pesticides as the obvious way to eliminate the parasite for good.
My name is Hamza and I'm from Somalia, and I'm angry about the current malaria campaigns. If malaria was killing people in the UK, there will be outrage and uproar. But the campaigns making a fuss about malaria today don't seem to be about saving lives so much as making Westerners feel good. They are doing something small, like buying a mosquito net.
Sub-Saharan Africa, where malaria is endemic, has a combined population of over 800 million, and they are not all little children who want to go to bed early, but that is what the bednet campaigns are offering. They really are the most patronising and pompous campaigns that we have seen in a long time.
First of all, I have to say that I feel very angry and disappointed with Western governments about the way that they mistreat us Africans. They shout loud words about how backwards and poor Africa is, and only whisper about the solutions to the problem. Malaria is a big problem in Africa. An estimated 20 million people have died from the disease since 1981. What the Western world wants to do is provide bed nets which will not get rid of the problem, but just hide the fact that it is there.
Hi, I'm Agnes. I was born and raised in London, but my family are originally from Lagos, Nigeria. According to the latest World Malaria report, there were an estimated 350,000 deaths from malaria in Nigeria in 2006. Therefore, like many people, I'm inspired by the idea that we can rid the world of malaria.
My name is Alice, and I want to help set the record straight on malaria and DDT, as it seems everyone is saying bed nets, bed nets, bed nets, and you can't mention chemicals or pesticides, even though using DDT is precisely how we eradicated malaria in the West.
My name is Ben, and as a kid I had to sleep under a bed net in Barbados before they sprayed. Now I don't have to spend half my life under a bed net, and I don't see why anyone else should have to either. Current efforts to tackle malaria in the developing world have focused on the charitable distribution and use of bed nets. Campaigners proudly announced that for about £5, you can provide a bed net for an African. The bed net allows a user to avoid being bitten by malaria-carrying mosquitoes whilst they're in bed. But who wants to spend all their time in bed with a bed net?
Can you imagine having to worry whether the next mosquito bite could kill you?
It's remarkable that in the 21st century, when we understand so much more about disease, our fears of chemical pesticides mean we needlessly allow the malaria parasite and the mosquitoes which carry them to thrive.
Ex-British Prime Minister Tony Blair has recently promoted, through the Tony Blair Faith Foundation, World Malaria Day on the 25th of April 2009, with a message that bed nets are the way to stop malaria in the developing world. The campaign, Malaria No More, also advocates donating $10 to buy a bed net. These campaigns are in fact peddling a shocking lie that bed nets will eradicate malaria.
My name is Andrew and I'm from Washington, D.C. The Western world used the pesticide DDT to great effect, and today we do not worry about catching the disease that fatally affects many millions in the developing world.
It's shocking to think how many people have died due to what is now seen as an inappropriate ban on a pesticide that was not harmful except to pests. It's perhaps even more shocking that present campaigns in the West that claim to be campaigning for the poor still don't like to mention the DDT word. But we should. And for some people, it will be a life and death debate.
Lots of organisations which claim to want to help poor countries have in fact let millions die because of a prejudice against a pesticide.
It's time we stop the panics and start spraying.
In spite of the World Health Organization's statement that DDT is suitable for use against malaria, the stigma attached to the chemical has remained.
It's the West ban on DDT that has killed people and is killing people today. Telling the truth would be a start, and boatloads of DDT, not bed nets, would make a huge impact.
Today, even the WHO, the World Health Organization, admits DDT is harmless, yet prefers not to mention it or promote it. The breadth and weight of information now available on pesticides should at least make us question how in the 21st century we can tolerate a situation where Western prejudice against chemicals mean we think it's okay for people to be wiped out by an easily destroyed parasite.
It seems to smack of double standards that an effective pesticide like DDT was great for eradicating malaria in the developed world, but is prescribed for the developing world today. With malaria defeated, the world would benefit to a tune of about 1 million more people a year, with all the great possibilities that could mean for humanity as a whole.
If we're serious about assisting our peers across the globe, this means that we should stop dictating what countries can and can't do. We should stop saying bed nets are the way forward and stop pushing our own prejudice about pesticides onto other countries.
There's something seriously wrong with the bed net fixation, which the likes of Bill Gates and Tony Blair like to big up. It's as if all that's needed is to pull on that little do something good muscle in the brain, and we can all live happily ever after. Well, millions don't and won't, as bed nets do not solve the problem, and it's a lie to say that they do. I think we should stop treating all of Africa as naughty children who should go to bed early. Stop lying and let the Africans get the pesticides out there big time.
It's now 2009 and Africa is still prevented from doing what the West did to eradicate malaria, all because of our prejudices, here in countries which are malaria-free. The ban on the use of DDT needs to be lifted. African nations should not have to suffer the needless human tragedies caused by malaria. It is only DDT or an equivalent that can solve this problem.
The positive evidence of wiping out malaria in some parts of the world exists, and they surely know by now that it would be possible to do the same the world over, using DDT. Sometimes it seems the more dangerous pests are in the West.
While environmental activists cautioned against the blind use of a toxin whose long-term effects were not understood, with a half-century of no long-term human damage, it is safe to say that proper use of DDT is the answer to the plague of malaria in the developing world. There should be no more excuses.
Today, there are 109 malarious countries. Given the scale of the problem, why are the WHO and all these foundations and campaigns now quiet about DDT? Are they too afraid to take on the Green Brigade, the environmentalists, those who fear all things chemical?
The Stockholm Convention is an international agreement banning the use of DDT in agriculture. Indoor spraying of DDT is acceptable under the convention when used in accordance with WHO guidelines and when safe, effective and affordable alternatives are not available. In practice, this means that DDT remains off-limits to developing countries where malaria is endemic. Contemporary anti-malaria campaigns such as Malaria No More, the Tony Blair Faith Foundation or Nothing But Nets focus their efforts on the provision of bed nets in African homes, despite the widely available evidence that a strategy involving only bed nets will not eradicate malaria. Moreover, the adherence of Western governments to anti-DDT regulations effectively prevents third world governments from taking matters into their own hands.
What I believe is that Africans should be allowed to use DDT in order to improve their conditions. Scientific studies have shown that DDT is not harmful to humans or the environment, and 92% of DDT disappears from the environment within 38 days. There is almost a subtext saying Africa's development will remain retarded while allowing the West to feel good that they are doing something.
A 1970 National Academy of Sciences report states, "To only a few chemicals does man owe as great a debt as to DDT. In a little more than 2 decades after World War II, DDT has prevented 50 million deaths due to malaria that otherwise would have been inevitable."
Dennis Avery of Africa Fighting Malaria estimates that the absence of DDT has led to the needless deaths of at least 30 million people from malaria and yellow fever in the tropics. That's really shocking.
The European Union forbids the sale of agricultural produce where DDT has been used, in accordance with the Stockholm Convention. This means that developing countries which use DDT against malaria risk losing the right to export food to Europe, with obvious economic consequences.
DDT does not cause cancer. In fact, it's so harmless to humans that the inventor of DDT toured the nation, giving speaking engagements where he would actually eat an amount of DDT to prove his point. Other well-known entomologists, including J. Gordon Edwards, have performed the same stunt to prove their point.
Why should Africans have to go to bed at dusk to avoid getting bitten? Or why should they have to avoid going to water sources in the cool of the evening? Bed nets can reduce incidences of malaria, but cannot bring down the death toll to levels any decent human being would consider tolerable.